Please comment where you are watching in the world. I didn't figure it out because he cheated. I figured it out because he got sloppy. A photo, barely perceptible, reflected in a wine glass, posted to his story. 2 glasses, one hand with pale pink nails, and someone's face half visible in the curve of the glass. Not mine. He told me he was at a work dinner. He told me he was tired. He told me I worry too much. And I believed him, for about 3 hours. His name was Lucas. We met at a bar downtown that I didn't even want to be at. He offered to buy me a drink and didn't flinch when I said mezcal neat. He called me a wild card and smiled like he meant it. Our first date was the next night. Our second was the night after that. By the end of the month, I'd memorized the way he stirred sugar into his coffee, the way he kissed the inside of my wrist before falling asleep, the way he always left his phone face down. I thought it was privacy. Turned out it was planning. We dated for 11 months. Moved in at 8. He was careful, attentive, never too warm, never too cold, just calibrated. I didn't realize what that meant until much later. He didn't love me. He was managing me. The night I saw the wine glass photo, I said nothing. I let him come home, watched him undress, let him crawl into bed and rest his hand on my hip like always. And I lay there, eyes open in the dark, calculating how far I could go without losing my balance. Instead of confronting him, I got quiet. Not cold, not distant, just precise. The next morning, I downloaded Tinder, created a new profile, new bio, new city, new name. Not to cheat, to test. I used a photo he'd never seen, one from college with a different haircut. Different vibe, not better, just unfamiliar. Within 3 days, I matched with him. Different name, different profile pic, same smile, same lies. I messaged first. He replied in less than 10 minutes. Said I seemed refreshingly grounded. Said he wasn't looking for anything serious, but open to connection. Said he worked in media, liked jazz, and respected honesty. I didn't respond for 2 days. Let him itch. Then I wrote back. You seem like the kind of guy who doesn't ghost. He replied, never. That's coward behavior. Over the next 2 weeks, we messaged daily. He didn't recognize me. Not even a hint. He flirted. He probed. He asked what I did for work. I said I was in design. He said, I love creative women. They feel more. I said, feel what? He said, everything. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I pressed screenshot. I created a folder. Named it Lucas Archive. Inside, screenshots. Voice memos. Screen recordings of our messages. Timestamps of every lie. Photos of him kissing me goodnight on the same nights he asked her, me, if I believed in slow burns. It wasn't rage I felt. It was clarity. Like I'd been underwater, and someone had opened a window. 3 weeks in, he asked fake me to meet in person. He suggested a bar downtown. The same one where we met. I said yes. Then I logged into our shared calendar and added a fake dental appointment for that night. He didn't even blink. He wore a navy coat and the cologne I bought him for Christmas. I sat 2 tables away, watching from the corner. He looked nervous. Studied the door. Checked his phone. I didn't show. Instead, I uploaded the entire chat log to a private blog. No names. No photos. Just the conversation. I sent the link to myself. Subject line, proof. That night, I confronted him. Not with yelling. Not with tears. Just truth. I waited until dinner was over. We were on the couch, sipping wine, his arm over my shoulder like a lock. I said, how was your dentist appointment? He smiled. Fine. Just a cleaning. I held up my phone. Opened the blog. Watched his face change as he read the words he'd written to a woman who didn't exist. He said nothing for a long time. Then, this is insane. I nodded. Agreed. He stood up. You catfished me. I smiled. You cheated on me with me. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Finally said, I don't even know what to say. I stood too. Don't. I prefer silence. He moved out 2 days later. Didn't ask for his things. Didn't follow up. Didn't apologize. But 2 weeks later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. I saw the blog. I think we dated the same man. I replied, tell me everything. Now there's a folder. Not just mine. Ours. A quiet record of women who refused to be rewritten. No names. No drama. Just details. Receipts. And a shared understanding. He thought he was the author. Turns out, we were all editors. I wasn't planning to leave a review. At first. I just wanted to eat my croissant, drink my overpriced latte, and not cry in public. Mostly, I wanted to prove to myself I could walk into that cafe without peeling open a memory I'd spent 2 years trying to suture shut. But then I saw him, behind the counter, wearing the same apron, same smirk, slightly different haircut. A man who once told me he hated mornings and espresso, now pulling perfect shots for customers who didn't know they were sipping coffee made by a compulsive liar. That's when I opened Google Maps, tapped the place, scrolled to write a review, and started typing. 1 star. For the croissant, which was fine. Everything else leaves a strange aftertaste. I paused, then kept going. I used to come here every Sunday with someone I thought I'd marry. He always ordered the same thing, oat milk curated extra hot. He said it reminded him of Barcelona, even though he'd never been. We talked about dreams here, about moving west, about opening a bookstore with a coffee bar in the back. I believed him. I believed everything. I hesitated. My heart was thudding harder than I expected, but I was already in. Then one day he texted me. I can't do this anymore. No call, no conversation, just a digital shrug. He blocked me on everything. Vanished. I didn't even get to return the copy of his house key I still had. I stared at the screen. People were watching him laugh behind the counter. He didn't see me. I kept writing. So imagine my surprise when I walked in today, for the first time in 2 years, and saw him here. Working. Laughing. Alive. Like nothing ever happened. I guess he still likes his curated extra hot, and his exits even colder. I hit post, closed the app, and left. The review got 12 likes in the first hour, then 50, then over 200. By the end of the day, it had been screenshotted and posted on a local gossip forum with the caption, "Best Cafe Review of the Year." Someone check on this man. I didn't include his name. Didn't have to. People figured it out. 3 days later, someone emailed me. No subject line. Just this. I think we dated the same guy. Was his name Colin? I stared at the screen, then typed back. Yes. When? She replied in minutes. 2019 to 2021. He ghosted me after telling me he wanted to introduce me to his family. Said he needed space. Never heard from him again. I replied. Same. More messages followed. Different women. Same story. I met him at that cafe too. He told me he wasn't ready for a relationship. Then I saw him on Hinge 3 days later. He said he was going to therapy. He wasn't. He said he loved me. He said I was the only one. Each message was a match striking in the dark. And suddenly, I wasn't alone in the fire. One of them, a woman named Tasha, suggested we meet. Not to obsess, she said. Just to compare notes. Get it out of our systems. We met at a wine bar, because none of us could stomach going back to that cafe. There were 5 of us. We ordered a bottle of red. Then another. Stories flowed like a confession circle in purgatory. The timelines overlapped. The lies were recycled. He told me I was ethereal. He told her she was soothing. He told all of us he had a fear of being forgotten, right before disappearing. He told me he didn't believe in labels, one woman said, rolling her eyes. But apparently he believed in backups. We laughed. The kind of laughter that comes from shared damage. Not bitter. Just awake. Tasha had an idea. What if we all left reviews? I blinked. Like, coordinated? Not coordinated, she said. Just honest. The next day, a new review appeared. The croissants are decent. But if the barista with the tattoo of a compass offers to take you on a road trip, say no. He'll ghost you somewhere between Asheville and your self-worth. Another followed. This place smells like lies and oat milk. Ask the guy behind the counter to define emotional maturity and watch him short-circuit. Then another. If you're reading this because you're thinking about dating the guy who works here, don't. He collects women like vinyl, only interested until the next rare find. Good luck. The cafe owner responded to the reviews, defending his staff. Then he stopped. People weren't reviewing the cafe anymore. They were reviewing him. And Colin? He stopped posting on Instagram, then eventually stopped showing up at work. 3 weeks later, I got a DM. Private account. No bio. But I knew it was him. You didn't have to do this. I stared at the message, then typed back. You're right. I didn't. But I did. And now you know what it feels like to be seen without consent. He never replied. I didn't delete the review. It's still there, buried under new ones now. Some funny, some sad, some probably fake. But mine is the original. The first spark. I go back and reread it sometimes. Not out of spite, not even out of pride, just to remind myself that silence is not always strength. Cashin's profile didn't scream danger. If anything, it whispered stability. I found him on an off-brand dating app the algorithm coughed up one night while I was half naked on my couch, eating leftover sushi and hate swiping. You know the kind, where the bios are just vague enough to make you curious but not enough to Google. His said, looking for real connections, good food, bad puns, deep convos, the holy trinity of modern dating delusions. His photos were curated, but not in the influencer way. More like the guy who asks his friend to take 50 candids and pretends he didn't care about any of them. Hiking trails, a rooftop cocktail, holding a golden retriever that I'd bet anything wasn't his. But he had that look, casual facial hair, light eyes, a jawline like a warning label. Grown without being boring. He messaged me first, which rarely happens. Said my book stack photo made him feel guilty about the 3 novels he's halfway through but spiritually abandoned. I liked that. I have a thing for guilt. We talked about books, then music, then travel. He said he'd backpacked through Eastern Europe. I asked if that was code for hooked up in hostels while eating cold pierogies. He laughed. Dry confident. I was in. By the end of the week, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Picked a tucked-away Italian place on the city's edge. Classy enough to wear jeans that don't stretch. Sketchy enough to feel like maybe he didn't want to be seen. I should have paid attention to that. He showed up just late enough to make it feel intentional. Wore a fitted button-down like he'd ironed it with his torso. Smelled like cedar and something expensive I couldn't name. The table was in the back. Dim lighting. Candles. The kind of ambience that whispers seduction or secrets. Sometimes both. We started talking about travel disasters. He told me about crashing a Vespa on a Croatian beach. I told him about the time I got food poisoning on a train in Berlin and hallucinated that my ex was a priest. We laughed. The food was good. The vibe was solid. And then, like a horror movie where the jump scare isn't the monster, but your own reflection, he froze. Mid-sentence. Just stopped. I followed his gaze toward the entrance and saw her. Tall. Red lips. A coat that looked like it cost more than my rent. She walked like she owned the floor. And she was coming straight toward us. My stomach did that slow, sinking thing. The kind you get when you realize the roller coaster wasn't bolted in right. Cashin didn't panic. He half smiled, sighed, and said, okay, full honesty time. I thought he was going to say he forgot his wallet, or that he used to be in a band with a dumb name like Velvet Guilt. But no, he said, and I quote, so, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm in an open marriage. That's my wife, Pharrell. She's just here to make sure there's trust between us. I didn't say anything, because what the hell do you say to that? She slid into the booth next to him like it was her birthright. Didn't greet me, didn't smile, just stared, like she was trying to download my soul. Cashin continued like we were discussing delivery options. We've been exploring non-traditional structures, polysequential bonding, transparency, emotional exposure therapy. He said it like he'd read it off a TEDx pamphlet. But Varel, she didn't follow the script. She looked at him and said, you didn't tell me you were meeting anyone tonight. Then to me. I found out because I was tracking his phone. Her voice was low, calm, the kind of calm you find right before a scalpel slips. I blinked, tried to piece it together. Was this a test? A trap? A kink? Cashin didn't so much as flinch. This is actually part of a loyalty framework, he said. I like to observe how people handle honesty under pressure. It tells me what kind of connection we could build. So now I was what? A lab rat. A case study? Varel's lip curled. Cool. So it's an experiment now. She turned to me. Just so you know, I never consented to any of this. He likes to play open, so he can cheat without the label. Then she stood up, tossed her napkin down like a gauntlet. Enjoy your test. And she left. Just like that. Cashin didn't follow her. Didn't even look fazed. He shrugged. Well, that could have gone smoother. Want dessert? No, Cashin. I did not want fucking dessert. I left. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. The next day, he sent a text like nothing happened. Hey, wild night, huh? Hope you're not mad. I didn't reply. A week later, a friend sent me a Reddit thread, local dating horror stories. Guess who had his own entry? Apparently, Cashin was infamous. Ran loyalty simulations. Set up elaborate dinner dates. Let his partner crash them for drama. Some said it was a fetish. Others said he was just a narcissist with a god complex. Frankly, I think it was both. But here's the part that really fucks with me. There was a moment, the night of our date, right before Varel walked in, where I thought maybe something real was happening. I felt seen, heard, maybe even liked. Turns out, I was just being measured. Scored. Filed away under Subject 27, responsive to pressure, moderate empathy, low boundary resistance. Now every time someone says they're into honest communication or emotional transparency, I check for shadows behind the booth. Because Cashin didn't just lie. He made me complicit in my own betrayal. I met Aloan on Bumble, which feels ironic now because bees are supposed to build things, not burn them down. At the time, I barely used dating apps. I treated them like expired vitamins. Something I'd open once every few months, poke around, then forget before anything kicked in. But that night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were loud, my ceiling looked judgmental, and my cereal was soggy. So I swiped. And there she was. Not filtered. Not curated. Just blurry film photos, a half smile, and a bio that said, "If you like building things from scratch and eating overpriced acai, we'll get along." I didn't know it then, but that single sentence was the thesis of our entire crash. We matched. She messaged first. Something weird like, "Do you think Jupiter's retrograde affects Wi-Fi?" I laughed. I replied. And then we didn't stop. Aloan was the kind of person who made you feel like you were already living inside a cooler life. Like you were just visiting hers. She didn't brag, she narrated. Said she worked in UX, helped a friend launch a clothing line, dabbled in branding, made mood boards for fun. I joked that I didn't even know what UX meant, and she replied, "Exactly. That's why it matters." I was working a data job at a real estate tech company. Boring. Predictable. I managed leasing app analytics and reported churn rates to middle-aged men who hated their wives. I told Aloan that. She didn't mock it, she asked questions. Real ones. Things like, what part of your job do you resent the most? If you could burn one policy at your office, what would it be? I didn't even know how frustrated it was until I started explaining it to her. Our first date was at a tea bar that doubled as a co-working space. The kind of place where everyone looks like they have a trust fund and a trauma journal. She showed up with a sketchbook and a Chromebook covered in stickers that probably cost more than the device. She wore a giant scarf, smelled like bergamot and printer ink, and sat cross-legged on the chair like she was born in a design sprint. We didn't do small talk. She launched into a monologue on design thinking, the ethics of microfinancing, and how brand psychology was the new religion. I should have rolled my eyes, but I didn't. I was in too deep already. She made me feel like I was being invited into the garage of something big. Within 3 weeks, we were inseparable. She started coming over to my apartment with books and whiteboard markers. We wrote ideas on the back of my closet door. She called it dreamstorming. We stayed up till 2 a.m. sketching UI flows and naming app features like we were already in beta. I still have the old notebooks. Pages and pages of bullet points, wireframes, go-to-market strategies. Ideas that made me feel alive for the first time in years. She said things like, "You're the brain. I'm the mouth. Let's build a ghost-proof platform for renters. Imagine a digital space where landlords are the ones who have to earn the star rating." It sounded smart, fresh, disruptive. We joked about calling it renter's revenge. Then one night, we were lying on the floor eating cheap Thai food off a pizza box, and she looked at me dead serious and said, "You need to quit your job." I laughed, thought she was being wild again. But she didn't laugh back. She sat up, hair falling into her face, and said, "I'm serious. You're wasting time. This could be real. If we don't jump, someone else will." She pulled up a pitch deck template on her laptop. We started filling it in that same night. By the end of the week, I'd given notice. My boss told me I was brave. I felt stupidly proud, like I'd finally chosen passion over paycheck. Aloan was thrilled. Said we'd take a week to build the MVP, then start prototyping. She booked us 2 days at a co-working space downtown. Said her friend Reese had passes. Day 1, she showed up late but buzzing. We whiteboarded like maniacs. Day 2, she no-showed. Said she wasn't feeling well. Then came the excuses. Wi-Fi's out. Family emergency. Migraine. My cat's sick. Except, she didn't have a cat. After a week of vague texts, she ghosted completely. No call. No, this isn't working. Just silence. I spiraled. I called. Messaged. Emailed. Checked her socials. Nothing. It felt like she'd evaporated. I started doubting my memory. Was I crazy? Did I hallucinate our entire startup? Then came the punch to the teeth. One night, too much coffee, not enough sleep, I was doom scrolling LinkedIn, trying to see if any old coworkers were hiring. And I saw it. A post from a guy named Reese. Proud to announce the launch of Rent-Aware, a renter-first property management solution. We're building transparency for the next generation of tenants. There were screenshots. Graphics. The layout looked familiar. Too familiar. I clicked the site. The design, the copy, even the tagline, mine. Word for word. Then I scrolled down. Eloan. Co-founder. Head of product. It felt like someone had scooped my insides out with an ice cream scoop and left the shell smiling. That night, I tore through our old Slack messages. Found the pitch deck. The draft emails. Our notes on competitor analysis. Every single part of Rent-Aware was ours. Except now it wasn't. Reese was her ex. I remembered her mentioning him once. Said he was arrogant. Controlling. Toxic. Turns out she was just rebuilding the dream with him instead of me. Using my words. My drafts. My late-night ideas. I wanted to scream. Wanted to call her out. Post a thread. Report the site. But I didn't do any of that. I just sat in the dark, staring at the screen, feeling like the dumbest man alive. The kind of man who quits his job for a fantasy built on someone else's blueprints. It's been 7 months. Rent-Aware got seed funding. They launched a beta. Hired a design firm. Got featured on a startup podcast. Meanwhile, I've been picking up contract work and watching my savings bleed out. Sometimes I still scroll through the site, click through pages that used to live in my sketchbook. Find lines I wrote in my kitchen now floating on their homepage. It's like watching your child grow up in someone else's house. I haven't heard from her since. No apology. No explanation. Just the soft echo of a woman who knew how to make you believe in something long enough to take it. If anyone ever tells you to quit your job for a startup, after 3 weeks of dating, don't. Unless you want to be the unwitting ghostwriter of someone else's success story. Eloan didn't break my heart. She stole my architecture and planted it in someone else's garden. Leith wasn't the kind of guy you'd expect to unsettle you. He didn't walk into your life all loud and shiny, demanding to be noticed. He sort of drifted in like fog or the smell of old books, quiet, slow, comforting even. The kind of guy whose presence feels like a weighted blanket on a cold day. We matched on an app one only checked when I wanted to feel something soft and low stakes. His profile was simple. A photo of him playing piano. Another of him biking through some misty trail. One where he's holding a coffee and a tattered paperback like he lives in a coming-of-age film. His bio read, amateur documentarian, good listener, always down for tacos. It didn't scream for attention. It hummed, and I was tired of screaming. We started talking. His texts had this calm rhythm to them. He punctuated sentences like he was brushing lint off a sweater. No overused emojis. No LOL spam. Just clear, thoughtful replies. He asked questions that didn't feel like interviews. They felt like invitations. What movie do you watch when you're sad? What part of your childhood feels like fiction now? Do you think silence is more honest than words? I answered all of them. Because I wanted to. Our first date was at a little bar with mismatched chairs and dusty vinyl records lining the walls. He got there first. Sat at a booth in the back, sipping something brown and moody. When I walked in, he looked up like he already knew what I'd look like. He didn't compliment me right away. He just said, "You found it," as if I'd passed some quiet test. We talked for hours. About childhood scars and forgotten suburbs. About documentaries and the slow death of print. He told me about a short film he made called Static Cities, a visual essay on crumbling towns and empty malls. I told him about my failed attempt to learn guitar in high school. He smiled and said, "That feels like a poem." That night, we walked around the block after the bar closed. The air was wet. His hands were in his pockets. He didn't try to kiss me, just walked like he had time. It felt safe. We hung out more. A second date at a coffee shop where they played jazz from cassette tapes. A third at a bookstore that sold tea with names like Existential Dread and Poet's Elixir. A fourth at a laundromat where we sat on a bench watching dryers spin like they were time machines. Leith never tried too hard. Never tried to impress. He just showed up. Thoughtful. Steady. Present. He'd say things like, "You don't laugh like other people. You answer like you're hiding a better version of the truth." And somehow, that didn't feel invasive. It felt like someone finally noticing the parts of me I didn't know were visible. Then came the cafe with the rain. It was a tiny place that only played vinyl and didn't believe in sugar. We sat by the window while the world turned gray outside. He ordered ginger lattes. I hated ginger but drank it anyway. We started talking about emotional patterns. He said something like, "People repeat the same behaviors on first dates. Like code they don't realize they're running." I nodded. Sure. Everyone has a script. Then he said it. So casually, it took me a few seconds to process it. I've actually been recording most of my dates lately. Just for reflection. I blinked. Thought I misheard him. "You mean like journaling?" I asked. "Writing down what happened?" He shook his head. "No. Like recording recordings. Audio. Sometimes video. It helps me see the dynamics more clearly. The patterns. You'd be surprised what you miss in real time." He stirred his drink like he hadn't just detonated something between us. I'm sorry, what?" I asked, my voice suddenly hollow. He leaned back and said, "It's not creepy. It's not about catching people doing anything wrong. Just observing. For personal growth." He said it like it was a meditation app. Like the most normal thing in the world. I stared at my cup, trying to remember everything I'd said to him over the past few weeks. Every story I told. Every vulnerable moment I offered like a gift. Had he recorded those? Had he watched them back like film reels? He nodded slowly. "I used a small mic under my jacket on 2 of our dates. And a GoPro once. I barely turned it on though. Barely. I felt my skin go cold. My fingers clenched around the mug like it could anchor me. "You recorded me." I said, not a question. He nodded again. "Just for reflection. Only first names. I don't share them." As if that made it better. As if my words, my face, my moments weren't being folded into some secret archive of human behavior like data in a lab. I asked him if he had a folder. A place where he kept these files. He didn't even hesitate. "Yes." I tagged them by tone. Humor percentage. Eye contact. Vocal shifts. I wanted to vomit. I left. I didn't finish my drink. Didn't say goodbye. I walked home in the rain, trying to remember if I ever said anything I'd regret. If I ever looked too soft. If he had footage of me smiling like an idiot while he stared at me like a damn research subject. He texted the next day. "Last night was intense. Want to check out that new bookstore cafe?" Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't told me I was a file in his emotional Dropbox. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. I just archived the chat. Like I was trying not to become one of his patterns. A few weeks later, I told a friend who works in tech about him. She gave me a look I'll never forget. The kind of look that says, "Oh, you met one of them." "There are guys who do that," she said. "They treat connection like product testing. They study tone, eye movement, emotional calibration. It's a whole subculture." I didn't ask for links. I didn't want to know. But I couldn't help imagining him in his room, late at night, watching clips of me laughing or fidgeting with my sleeve. Taking notes like, eye contact held for 4.2 seconds. Subject leaned in at timestamp 12:04. Voice pitch increased at joke delivery. I started wondering if he edited them. If he added music. If he watched them more than once. If I was his favorite. Or just another file. Here's the part that messes with me. Leith never raised his voice. Never pressured me. Never touched me without asking. He did everything right. And still I ended up feeling violated. Because intimacy without consent is still a breach. Because being watched without knowing is still a kind of theft. Because even soft surveillance is still surveillance. I don't date much now. Not because I'm scared. Because I'm tired. Tired of wondering if the person across from me is actually seeing me, or just recording what seeing me looks like. Tired of wondering if my vulnerability is being uploaded when I'm not looking. Sometimes I imagine running into him at a gallery one day. Maybe he's standing beside a screen, watching a loop of women's faces while sipping tea and nodding thoughtfully. Maybe mine's there, blurred, but unmistakable. And maybe someone beside him says, "She seems real." And he just replies, "She was. That's why I recorded her." Sarah messaged me first, which already threw me off, because women like her don't usually reach out first. You know, the type, magnetic in that quiet, slow burn kind of way. Her first message read, "You seem like the type who remembers birthdays." I stared at it for a solid minute, trying to figure out if it was flirtation or a trap. It felt like both. I responded. We talked, and within 2 days, I was rearranging my week to see her. Our first date was at a bar she picked. The kind where the lighting is too low to read the menu and everything costs too much but tastes like regret and rosemary. She showed up in an oversized coat and bright red lipstick. She sat down across from me like she already belonged there. Not just at the table, like she belonged in the night itself. Like everything else was just noise. She asked questions that skipped the first date script. What's your biggest regret from high school? What's something you pretend you're over, but you're not? She didn't fill the silence. She let it sit there, heavy and intentional, like she was waiting for me to confess something I hadn't told anyone else. I answered. I shouldn't have, but I did. We kissed outside under a busted streetlight. She got in an Uber without looking back. I stood there grinning like a fool, texting my group chat. Yo, I think I just met someone actually cool. It moved fast. Suspiciously fast. She texted every day. Voice notes, memes, 2 a.m. messages about songs that made her ache. She sent me playlists titled things like For When You Can't Sleep But Don't Know Why. She never stayed the night. Always said she liked her own bed better. I didn't question it. She'd show up with snacks and dusty vinyls from her friend's record shop. We sat on the floor eating popcorn out of mixing bowls, talking about movies we both claimed to love just to impress each other. I started writing down things she said. I stopped swiping. I Googled what it meant when someone dreams about you, because she told me I'd been in one of hers. She had me, but there were cracks. Tiny ones, like hairline fractures in a mirror. She'd say things like, "He would have loved this song. That reminds me of someone I used to know." I never asked for a name. I figured we all have pasts. Then I saw a notification pop up on her phone while she was in the bathroom. A Snapchat from someone named Kale. The emoji next to it wasn't friendly. It was breakup energy. It was unfinished business. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that guy. The paranoid one. The insecure one. I wish I had. 2 months in, things started to drift. She canceled plans 2 weekends in a row. Said she was tired. Said work was insane. When we did hang out, she was there but not. Like she was listening for something else. Like she was waiting for a different moment to arrive. Her phone lit up more. She responded faster to other people than to me. I noticed. I noticed everything, but I still didn't say anything. And then one Thursday, we were supposed to meet up after work. I texted her. Still good for later? No reply. An hour passed. 2. I sent a meme, trying to be casual. Nothing. The next morning, I woke up and I was blocked. Everywhere. Not just on text. Instagram gone. Spotify playlist? Deleted. Snapchat? No trace. She ghosted me like I was a scam caller. Like I never existed. And I didn't know why. I didn't even know what the hell had just happened. A few days later, a friend texted me. "Isn't this the girl you were seeing?" Attached was a screenshot of Cyril's story. A blurry photo of intertwined hands across a restaurant table. Captioned, "Some things are worth the wait." That's when it clicked. Kale. The someone she used to know. The ghost in her voice notes. The unfinished sentence in her eyes. He came back, and I'd been the stand-in. I found out later from a girl who knew her through a mutual friend. We ran into each other at a show. She looked at me like she recognized my name, but couldn't place it. Then it hit her. "Oh, you're the guy she dated after Kale. She called you her reset. Said she needed someone better than him, so he'd see what he lost." She said it like it was fact. Like it wasn't cruel. Like I should have seen it coming. Apparently, Cyril and Kale had a messy breakup. Real burn the bridge and salt the ground kind of thing. He moved on fast. She didn't. So she made a plan. She'd level up. Find someone better. Someone who looked good on paper. Someone with decent teeth and a full-time job. Someone who could be photographed in dim lighting like a romantic revenge ad. And then when he came back, she'd drop it all. Slide right back into the familiar ache. I wasn't a person. I was a performance. It didn't break my heart. It broke my sense of reality. Because it made me question the entire relationship. Every voice note. Every playlist. Every night on my floor eating popcorn. Was any of it real? Or was I just the background noise in her love story? I didn't text her. Didn't ask for answers. Didn't beg for clarity. But sometimes late at night, I replay our conversations. Try to dissect them like crime scenes. You remind me of someone I used to know. She meant Kale. You seem like the type who remembers birthdays. She meant he didn't. You make me feel calm in a way I forgot existed. She meant I wasn't him. And that's the thing. I never stood a chance. Because I wasn't the person she wanted. I was just the person she used to get him back. Now every time someone says they've just gotten out of something, I run. Every time a girl sends me a playlist, I wonder if it's coded for someone else. Every time someone holds my hand across a table, I check the angle, just in case it's being framed for someone else's attention. Cyril didn't ruin me. She taught me something worse. I met Ivar at a bar with red lights and no sign out front. One of those places that pretends it's too cool to advertise, so you walk in already feeling like you should apologize for not knowing the bartender's name. He was standing alone near the jukebox, drinking something clear and bitter. I remember noticing his hands first, long fingers, a ring that looked antique but intentional. He was dressed like someone who knew what cut meant when it came to denim. I didn't expect him to be friendly, but when I ordered a drink and made a comment about the music, some obscure post-punk band I only knew because of a roommate, he turned to me and said, "You like this stuff?" Like it was a test. I nodded. He smiled. "Most people pretend to." I said, "I'm not most people." He laughed. And that was it. We talked for an hour. I don't even remember what we talked about, just that it felt like being seen through a filter I didn't know existed. He asked good questions. Not just what do you do, but what's something you miss that you can't explain. That kind of thing. I left that night with his number and a weird sense of gravity in my chest. Our first date was 2 nights later. He picked a dive bar with a photo booth in the back. Said he liked places with texture. He wore a leather jacket that had definitely not come from Zara. Said he used to live in Berlin. Said he worked in freelance content strategy, which is code for I do whatever pays me and sounds cool. But he listened. That was the thing. Really listened. When I talked about my dad, who used to build furniture by hand, and then suddenly didn't, he didn't blink. When I told him I used to write poetry and stopped because it made me feel too exposed, he said, "There's a different kind of nakedness in silence." I fell harder than I should have. We started seeing each other regularly. Once a week, then twice. Then it bled into sleepovers, late-night phone calls, and playlists sent at 3 a.m. Ivar liked to talk about emotions like they were something to be mapped. "People always think vulnerability is the end of control," he said once, as we lay on his floor surrounded by old DVD cases. "But it's also the best way to find leverage." I thought it was philosophical. Now I know better. It started unraveling because of a podcast. I was walking to work, half awake, scrolling through Spotify when I saw an episode titled, "Emotional Game Theory: How to Win a First Date in 3 Moves." I clicked it, curious, and I heard a voice I recognized. Not just the voice, the cadence, the phrasing, the way he said leverage. I paused it, rewound, played it again. It was Ivar. He was a guest on the episode, introduced as a dating strategist and creator of Primal Proof, a YouTube series on emotional dynamics in modern relationships. I had never heard of this channel, never seen a link, never been told. I Googled it that night. The channel was slick, professional, a little too slick. The banner read, "Decode Desire, Reclaim Power, Prove the Primal," and under it, weekly episodes on emotional patterning, psychological triggers, and the art of romantic proof. There were dozens of videos. Titles like, "How to Make Her Open Up in 20 Minutes," "Date Night Dynamics, The Perfect First Drink," "Vulnerability as a Weapon." I clicked one at random. It was a dimly lit video titled, "Silent Calibration, The Power of Pauses." And there he was, Ivar, sitting in front of a bookshelf, wearing the same ring I'd seen him wear on our first date, speaking softly to the camera, dissecting conversations like they were chess games. He used phrases I remembered, lines I thought were spontaneous. He broke down eye contact like a weapon, smiles like openings, insecurity like kindling. I watched more, and then I saw it. A thumbnail that made my stomach flip. It was our bar. Same booth, same lighting, same angle. And in the corner of the screen, blurry, not quite in focus, but unmistakably me. The video was titled, "First Date Breakdown Number 17, Deep Cuts Plus Emotional Pacing." I clicked it. The audio was edited. My voice was blurred, pitched down, anonymized. But it was me. I remembered that night. I remembered the story I told about my dad. The joke I made about the jukebox. The way I said, I'm not most people. He paused the video at that moment. Rewound it. Said to the camera, watch her body language here. She's leaning in. That line? That's a mirror response. It means she's trying to match. That's good. That's where you apply the emotional hook. My stomach dropped. I was a case study. The comments were worse. Men with usernames like Alfary Boot and Neurotrigger Guy were dissecting me like a frog in freshman bio. She's classic, anxious, preoccupied. You can tell she's craving validation. He played that perfectly. At 5:13, she gives the compliance laugh. That's when you go for the close. This is how you handle creatives. They're addicted to being understood. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark for 2 hours. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. I confronted him 2 days later. I texted first. Can we talk somewhere quiet? He replied like nothing was wrong. Of course. Come by around 9. I did. He opened the door like it was just another Tuesday. I sat on his couch, stared at him, said nothing. Then I asked, how many of your dates have you filmed? He didn't flinch, just tilted his head and said, not filmed, documented. I asked if he had a release form. He said, it's legal if it's in a public place and identities are masked. I checked. I asked if he ever thought about what it felt like. He said, I think about feelings all the time. That's the point. I asked if I was special. He said, you were effective. That was the word he used. Effective. Like I was a marketing campaign. Like I was a successful test result. I left. Didn't cry until I got home. Didn't tell anyone for weeks. I kept checking the channel, morbid curiosity. He kept uploading. Kept analyzing. I watched him break down the way women hold menus. The way they laugh too fast. The way they talk about their mothers. He never named names. Never showed full faces. But I saw myself in every frame. I don't date anymore. Not because I'm scared. Because I don't trust what people are doing with the things I say when I think I'm safe. Because now, when someone listens too closely, I wonder if they're taking notes. Because now, when someone says, tell me something real, I hear, give me content. Jace didn't feel like a red flag. He felt like a warm coat on a cold day. Like the kind of safety you forget to question. We met at a mutual friend's gallery opening. He was standing alone, staring at a painting of a woman curled up on a couch, her eyes half shut like she was trying to disappear. I joked that it looked like me every Sunday morning. He looked at me and said, she reminds me of someone. Then he smiled. You kind of do too. I laughed, awkward but flattered. I didn't know then what he meant. I didn't know how deep those words would cut later. He asked for my number before I finished my wine. Said he liked people who noticed the sad parts of things. I told him that was the most pretentious line I'd heard all night. He grinned like he had just won something. He texted that same night, do you always look at art like it's going to betray you? I replied, only when it flirts first. And just like that, I was in. The first few weeks were easy. Jace was the kind of guy who paid attention. Not just in the performative way a lot of men do, where they parrot back your favorite book or fake surprise when you mention your birthday. Jace listened like he was building a mental replica of me, piece by piece. He remembered things I didn't realize I'd said. He brought me soup when I had a cold, and left a note that said, I refuse to let you suffer in silence. That's bad storytelling. He made playlists. Handwritten grocery lists. Lit candles during sex. He said fuck like a comma. He looked at me like I was the last song on the record. And I started to believe it. The first weird moment came during sex. We were tangled up in his sheets, sweaty, breathless, still laughing from something dumb I said, and he froze. Mid-movement. Just stopped. His hand on my hip, his eyes far away. I asked if he was okay. He blinked. Then said, sorry. You just reminded me of her. I thought he meant an ex. It stung, but I let it slide. We all have ghosts. Later, as we lay there, I asked, who's her? He didn't answer right away. Just stared at the ceiling like it held a secret. Then finally, my sister, Ivy. She died 2 years ago. Car accident. I didn't know what to say. So I reached over and held his hand. He whispered, you have her laugh. My body went cold. After that, things didn't fall apart, but they shifted. He'd say things like, you tilt your head the exact same way she did when she was trying to lie. Ivy used to draw on her legs when she was bored. You do that too. At first, I thought he was just grieving. that maybe being with me helped him feel something other than the void. But then I saw the photo. It was on his bookshelf, tucked behind a stack of old poetry books. A Polaroid, curled at the edges. I thought it was me. Same hair, same eyes, same slouch. For a split second, I thought, when did he take this? Then I looked closer. It wasn't me. It was Ivy, and she looked like my ghost. I didn't say anything that night, but I couldn't sleep. I lay in his bed, wide-eyed, while he snored softly beside me. My brain was doing laps. Was I just a stand-in? A projection? Was he kissing my mouth while picturing hers? The next morning, I asked about the photo. Tried to keep it casual. He smiled, tapped it gently. She was my best friend. We were close. Like, closer than normal, probably. I asked what he meant. He shrugged. We just understood each other. No bullshit. She got me in a way no one else ever has. Until you. I tried to laugh. It came out wrong. Like I was choking on something invisible. After that, I started noticing the comparisons more. He'd mention her in passing, like a reflex. She would have loved this movie. You walk like her when you're focused. You both hate cilantro. He once asked me to wear a specific shade of lipstick. Said it looked powerful. I wore it to dinner. He stared at me all night like I was a memory come to life. Later, when we were having sex, he whispered her name. Not mine. Hers. Just once. But I heard it. Fuck Ivy. I stopped. Rolled off him like I'd been slapped. He looked panicked. Apologized. Blamed the wine. I got dressed. Left without speaking. He texted that night. Please. I fucked up. It was a mistake. You're not her. But you make me feel like she's not gone. I didn't reply. But I didn't block him either. That's the worst part. Some sick part of me wanted to understand. Later, a friend of mine, who knew Jace peripherally, told me the full story. They weren't just siblings. They were inseparable. Lived together. Traveled together. Some even joked they were too close. She showed me old Instagram posts. Captions like, "My forever person. No one gets me like Ivy. The only one who sees the real me." It was her birthday when we met. It was her favorite band on our first playlist. It was her middle name he used as his Wi-Fi password. Everything was a loop. I wasn't his girlfriend. I was his grief doll. I confronted him one last time. Met him at a cafe I hated, just so I wouldn't romanticize it later. He looked thinner. Tired. Like sleep had stopped visiting him. I asked him the question I'd been sitting with for days. Were you ever actually in love with me? Or just trying to resurrect her? He didn't answer for a long time. Just stared at his coffee like it held a verdict. Finally, he said, "I don't know the difference anymore." And that was worse than a no. I left. Didn't look back. Didn't cry until a week later, while folding laundry, when I found the lipstick he loved. I threw it out, along with the playlist. The photos. The memory of his hand on my thigh, while calling me someone else. I still think about him sometimes. Not with longing. With unease. Because there's a kind of love that doesn't want you. It wants your echo. And there's a kind of grief that doesn't grieve. It hunts for replacements. Jace didn't mean to hurt me. But he did. Because I wasn't a person to him. I was a loop. And he needed someone to play her part. Liz didn't flirt, she observed. She wasn't the kind of woman who batted her lashes or leaned in too intentionally. She didn't touch your arm when she laughed or make a show of remembering the drink you liked. She watched. Waited. Filed things away behind her eyes like they might be useful later. We met at a writing workshop I wasn't even supposed to attend. My friend had begged me to come, said it would loosen me up. I was hungover, barely caffeinated, and already planning my escape. Then she started reading. Her piece was called Mouthfuls of Grief, and it was less a story than it was surgical. The kind of writing that slips a blade between your ribs before you realize it's there. I only remember one line, but it stuck. He touched me like he was trying to find a wound he could name. I let him. Then I wrote about it. He never knew. She didn't look up once. Just read it like she was trying to exorcise something. When it was over, the room stayed silent longer than it should have. I didn't ask a question. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, stunned in a way that felt almost shameful. After the session, I went outside to smoke, even though I'd quit months ago. She was already out there, leaning against the railing, clove cigarette between her fingers, wearing all black, turtleneck, wide-leg pants, boots with silver zippers. Her hair was tied up in this loose, careless knot like she'd done it in a moving car. I said something stupid. Your writing feels like watching someone bleed on purpose. She exhaled smoke without looking at me. That's not a compliment. I shrugged. Didn't say it was. She turned then. Looked me over like she was trying to decide what section of me to read first. You look like someone who apologizes before they ask for what they want, she said. I laughed nervously. You always start conversations like this? She flicked ash into the wind. Only when I'm bored. Then she handed me her number and walked away. We didn't call it a date. She invited me to a bookstore bar, one of those dimly lit places with dusty shelves, mismatched chairs, and a bartender who judged you for ordering anything with more than 2 ingredients. She pulled a novel off the shelf, flipped to a page at random, and asked me to read a paragraph out loud. I did. Then she read one back. We traded quotes all night like secrets. I picked something from Baldwin. She picked Winterson. To be ill-adjusted to a deranged world is not a breakdown. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. But when she left, she texted me. You feel like a secret that's finally allowed to be told. I reread it 3 times before I could even breathe. It started fast. Every other day, then every day. She'd show up at my place with wine and books, and a playlist named something like For When You Want to Feel Skinless But Safe. She didn't ask normal questions. She asked what scared me at 10, what I pretended not to need at 16, what I thought about when I came alone. I answered everything. And when we had sex, it wasn't performative. It was quiet and deliberate, like we were writing something together. A slow press of mouths. Her hands always searching. She made eye contact the entire time, like she wanted to catch my soul, trying to leave my body. Afterwards, she'd lie naked on her side, stare at me, and ask things like, "What part of this would you keep if I left right now?" I once said, "All of it." She didn't smile. She just kissed me once, soft and brief, like punctuation. She never posted about me, never tagged me, never called me her boyfriend. But she came back again and again. She'd leave notes in my books. Don't trust anyone who flinches at your softness. She'd quote me back to myself. You said people only want to hold what they think they can fix. Does that include you? I started writing again. Real writing. Not just half-finished Google Docs and shame-filled journal entries. I wrote poems about her knees, her breath, the way she curled into herself when she was about to cry but didn't want to. I told her I'd never met anyone like her. She said, "That's because I'm not trying to be anyone." One night, she left her laptop open while she showered. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a playlist. But one tab was open wounds, soft light. The blog was minimal. Black text. White background. No bio, no links. Just a grid of titles. Man number 6, the one who apologized for breathing. Man number 9, the one who smelled like absence. Man number 14, the one who cried after I came. Each post was a short essay. Fragmented. Beautiful. Dangerous. I clicked the most recent one. Man number 17, the one who wanted to be the poem. The first paragraph hit like a slap. He reads Baldwin to impress me. It almost works. He fucks like he's trying to be gentle, but keeps forgetting how. He folds my shirts like he's afraid I'll disappear. He says he wants to be known. I make notes. I stopped breathing. She hadn't used my name. But it was me. Every line. Every detail. The night I read Baldwin. The way I folded her shirts. Even the line I'd said during sex, half joking. "I think I want to be a poem." She hadn't laughed then. Just kissed my forehead and said, "Maybe you already are." I thought it was tenderness. It was fieldwork. She came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, water dripping down her legs. "You okay?" she asked, seeing my face. I didn't answer. She didn't ask what was wrong. She already knew. We didn't scream. We didn't fight. I asked why. She said, "Because writing is how I metabolize intimacy. You understand that." I didn't respond. She sat on the edge of the bed, pulled her knees to her chest. "You made me feel safe. That's rare. And terrifying. So I wrote. It's what I do." I asked if I was just a story. She said, "You were a story I didn't want to end." I asked if she would delete it. She didn't answer. I didn't leave that night. I know how that sounds. I know what you're thinking. But it wasn't that simple. She made me feel seen in a way that felt holy. Even if it was for the wrong reasons. We kept sleeping together. Kept talking. Kept pretending the blog didn't exist. Sometimes, during sex, I'd wonder if she was already rewriting it in her head. Man number 17, the one who stayed after reading his own autopsy. She'd whisper things like, You're the only one who stayed long enough to hear the second version. I should have left, but I didn't. A month later, I met a guy at a party who knew her. He was drunk, bitter, and said something that chilled me. You see her blog? She got me too. Man number 11. The one with the sleep talking. I didn't even have to ask. The look on his face said everything. He'd been written. Just like me. Just like the others. The next morning, I packed my things while she slept. Left a note that just said, I don't want to be your favorite sentence. I didn't block her. I didn't delete the text threads. But I never went back. A week later, she posted a new essay. Man number 17. The one who left without a line. She wrote, he folded the sheets like he was trying to erase his shape from them. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. The silence was enough. It was the punctuation mark he thought I wouldn't use. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the tab. It's been months since then. I met Caleb through a friend. Not a dating app, not a bar, not even a setup, just a mutual friend's housewarming party. He was standing in the kitchen alone, sipping beer out of a mason jar and quietly laughing at the chaos around us. He looked like the kind of guy who didn't try too hard to impress anyone. Solid build. Slightly overgrown hair. Wore a plain black tee, like it was the only shirt he owned. He had that kind of calm that made you want to get closer, just to figure out what he wasn't saying. We started talking about books. Or maybe it was music, I honestly don't remember. What I do remember is how easy it was. How fast he made me feel like I already knew him. By the time I left, I had his number saved under maybe. Not because I was unsure, but because I didn't want to jinx how much I already liked him. We went on our first date 2 days later. Coffee turned into lunch, turned into an aimless walk around the neighborhood that ended with me sitting on my front porch wondering how it had only been 6 hours. By the end of the week, we'd had 3 more dates. He texted just enough. Called once. Asked questions, actually listened. He didn't feel like someone I had to perform for. I let my guard down. That's when things started to shift. The first time Caleb came over, I remember feeling a little nervous. Not in a bad way. Just that excited, kind of vulnerable. You know the feeling. You've just cleaned your whole apartment for someone who says they don't care if it's clean. He was impressed. Not by the space, but by the little things. You organize your books by mood, he said, running a finger along a shelf. That's kind of beautiful. No one had ever noticed that before. He stayed late. We kissed on the couch. Nothing more. He said he liked to take things slow. And for once, I didn't feel like it was a line. He left around midnight. I locked the door behind him. Or at least, I thought I did. The next morning, something felt off. The chair by the window was facing the wrong direction. My slippers, which I always left by the door, were by the foot of my bed. I brushed it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I forgot. That night, Caleb texted me. Did you sleep okay? You looked peaceful. I stared at the message. You looked peaceful. We hadn't spent the night together. I replied, wait, how do you know that? He didn't respond for a full 10 minutes. Then, oh, I meant last time I saw you. You looked peaceful then. I let it go, even though I felt that twinge in my stomach. That little internal alarm we're taught to ignore. Things escalated quickly after that. Caleb started texting constantly. Not clingy, just present. Always. I'd wake up to good morning texts before my alarm. He'd comment on things I hadn't posted yet. Things I'd only taken photos of. You should wear that gray sweater more often, he texted once. I hadn't worn it in public that day. Just around my apartment. Another time, he asked if I'd gotten the grocery delivery I forgot to mention. Little things. But too many of them. I asked if he was nearby. Jokingly. He replied with a winking emoji. I stopped joking. About 3 weeks in, I came home from work and found him in my kitchen. Just like that. He was leaning against the counter, eating an apple. I froze in the doorway. How did you get in here? He smiled, easy and calm. The spare key under your doormat. I hadn't told him about the key. I didn't even remember it was still there. You what? Why would you come in without asking? He looked hurt. Genuinely hurt. I just wanted to surprise you. I thought you'd like it. You said you hate coming home to an empty place. I had said that. Once. Casually. While half asleep. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, trying to decide if this was romantic or terrifying. He stepped closer. I cleaned the kitchen a little. Hope that's okay. It was cleaner. The sink was empty. My dish towel folded. My fridge reorganized. I told him I had a headache and needed to be alone. He He left, reluctantly. That night, I changed where I kept the key. The next morning, there was a note slipped under my door. New spots a little less clever. I stopped responding to his messages. He kept texting. Photos of his lunch. A picture of a coffee mug I'd once complimented. I blocked him. He started emailing me, then mailing actual letters. One every day for a week. They started sweet. I miss talking to you. Things felt right with you. Then, I know this doesn't feel right to you, but that's just fear talking. And finally, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I changed the locks, installed a camera at my door, filed a police report, though I knew it wouldn't do much. They told me, unless he threatens you or breaks in again, there's not much we can do. I asked, isn't this already threatening? The officer didn't answer. For a while, things went quiet. No letters. No sightings. I started to breathe again. Slept more than a few hours. Even considered reactivating my social media. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of my balcony door unlocking. It was subtle. A click. A shift in the air. I live on the second floor. I held my breath. No footsteps. No movement. Just the quiet creak of the balcony door swinging inward. And then the smell. His cologne. Subtle. That faint, woody scent I used to like. Now it clung to the air like a warning. I grabbed my phone. Called 911. But by the time they arrived, there was no one there. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. Just a note on my kitchen table. I don't need keys to know you. I moved 2 weeks later. New apartment. New number. New locks. No social media. I don't tell people where I live. I don't go to the same coffee shops. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and check the closet. Other times, I find the salt shaker turned the wrong way, or a pair of socks folded exactly how I used to do it. I try to tell myself it's nothing, that it's in my head, but I never forget the way he said it. I don't need keys to know you. Story 2. This happened about 6 months ago. I arranged a Tinder date with a nice-looking guy. We'll call him Dave. Dave and I have chatted a bit, and he offers me a ticket to a hip-hop show. I've never heard of the artist before, but the venue is close to my house, and I like new experiences. I met Dave at a bar beforehand, in case I want to bail out immediately. He's a little heavier than his picture and has terrible acne. He also straightens his hair into his face. I'm 29, so sitting across from this hairstyle makes me feel like I'm in a date with a 17-year-old. But Dave is very polite and shares my interest in history, so I figure I should give the guy a chance. I'm not attracted to him, but it's easy to get a new hairstyle and lose a couple pounds. Why be shallow? So after a couple drinks, we head out to the show. Well, the artist isn't bad at all, but nobody is there. The town I live in doesn't have a hip-hop scene at all. There's about 12 people there besides us. It's pretty sad. So the artist stops the show early at about 10:30. I've had a couple more drinks at the venue, and I'm starting to get a good buzz on, so I suggest we go to another bar and keep the date going. We head across the street and play 3 games of pool at a nearby bar. The bar owner is there, and he keeps bothering us. I don't know if he's trying to connect with his customers or trying to hit on me, but it's rather awkward, and I deal with that by knocking back several drinks in rapid succession. At some point I become too drunk to pay any kind of reasonable game of pool. I mean, I'm totally shit-faced, giving my cell phone the one I closed, trying to move it into your depth perception stare. It's the only reasonable excuse I have for what happens next. We leave the bar, and I'm trying to figure out how to excuse myself for the night and get home when someone approaches us on the street. In my drunken state, I thought it was a homeless guy, but all I can really remember is that he was a white fellow with dreadlocks. He starts yelling at us, and when we turn around, he offers us a hit of acid for a cigarette. Now, I'm a big fan of hallucinogens. It's also just good economics. A cigarette costs $1. A hit of acid costs $10. I say yes, enthusiastically, expecting a blotter. Well, this guy doesn't have that. He pulls out a vial and dropper. Something in the back of my head says, this is a bad idea, but I'm wasted and I don't have work the next day. So I open my mouth. I don't know where this guy came from or why the universe put him in my path, but he squeezes the acid in my mouth, and as it expands across my tongue, I know. This is not a drop. This is more acid than I have ever taken in my life. I have made a huge fucking mistake. This guy proceeds to dose my date, and then continues walking down the street, shouting nonsense. Dave turns to me excitedly and says, I've never done acid. I'm vaguely aware that I have done something terrible. I say, Then we need to go to my house now. When I got to the house, I was still drunk and excited. I tell my roommate something magical happened, and we were gifted acid. She looks at my date, and then at me like I'm a crazy person. She tells me she's going to bed early. It's about 45 minutes after taking it that the acid starts to hit. Every couple minutes I have to reassure Dave that everything is okay, and the way he's feeling is normal and will go away. He goes to use my bathroom. My bathroom is freakishly tiny. It was a closet that was remodeled. Somehow he hits his forehead on my bathroom shelf where a screw was loose. The screw cuts into his forehead. He comes out of the bathroom and says, "Hey, I don't want to freak you out, but my head is bleeding. Can you look at it?" This freaks me out immediately. The wound is small. I gauge that it doesn't need stitches, but this guy is definitely going to have a little scar. I do my best to calm this poor soul, but I can't find any bandages. I run upstairs and rummage through my roommate's bathroom. No bandages. So we form a duct tape toilet paper bandage and slap it on his head. He's so freaked out he's shaking. A little bit later I start tripping so hard I can't finish a sentence. Dave looks freaked out. All I can say is, "It's okay." Then we spend about 4 hours in silence, starting at the intro to a DVD repeating endlessly. I can't even form sentences in my mind. I have never again or before been this high. I want to reassure him, but there's nothing I can do. We're both lost. The entire night and morning passes this way. No conversion except me telling him he is going to be okay when I can muster up the words. Around about noon the next day, he says he feels like he can bus home okay, and I get him out of my house. He texts me that he got home safe, and we never spoke again. It was late April when everything changed, one of those soft, golden afternoons when the world seemed determined to convince you everything would work out in the end. I never expected a casual relationship to unravel in such a bizarre, unsettling way. But maybe spring, with its deceptive warmth and sudden storms, was the perfect metaphor for how Nick swept into my life and left it forever marked. I'd always liked spring in Nashville. The city came alive with cherry blossoms lining West End Avenue, cafes opening their patios again, and music spilling out of every open window in the Gulch. The world woke up, shaking off winter's gloom, and for a little while, anything felt possible. It was in that hopeful mood I first met Nick. I ran a small bookstore in East Nashville, tucked away near the Five Points area. A cozy, quiet place named Novel Idea, filled with worn chairs, stacks of novels, and regular customers who lingered over coffee. My life was calm, predictable even, exactly how I liked it. Then one spring afternoon, Nick walked in. Sunlight streaming through the windows illuminated his dark hair and tattoos snaking up both arms, vibrant colors peeking out from beneath his sleeves. His confident stride and casual smile made him impossible to ignore. Noticing my gaze, he grinned warmly, leaning casually against the checkout counter. "You must be Cassie," he said, extending a tattooed hand. "I am," I replied, cautiously amused. "Have we met?" "Nope. But your assistant Beth recommended you," he explained. "I'm Nick. I just opened the tattoo parlor down the block. Thought I'd introduce myself." I smiled politely, intrigued despite myself. We chatted easily for a few minutes. He mentioned his move from Austin, his passion for art, his excitement about East Nashville's creativity. Something about his openness was appealing, refreshing even. Before he left, Nick turned back, grinning playfully. "Hey Cassie, maybe I'll convince you to get your first tattoo one day." I laughed lightly, shaking my head. Not a chance. Yet somehow, despite my initial hesitation, we started spending time together. It began as coffee breaks at Bongo Java, walks in Shelby Bottoms Park, and occasional dinners at Mas Taco's Poor Favor. It was casual, comfortable, and surprisingly easy. Nick's energy brought a vibrant contrast to my quiet routine. But as weeks passed, something subtle shifted. Our conversations grew deeper, his laughter warmer, and his gestures became more intimate. In mid-May, during one of Nashville's sudden rainstorms, we sat sheltered under the awning at Barista Parlor, sipping coffee as rain pounded the pavement. He reached over suddenly, tracing gentle circles across my palm, his eyes intense. "You're special, Cassie," he murmured softly. "I've never met anyone like you." Something about the sincerity of his voice warmed me, even as it stirred unease. I wasn't ready for intensity, especially from Nick, whose spontaneity already made me cautious. But I brushed aside the worry, enjoying the gentle warmth of his touch and the soft whispers of rain. A week later, on another perfect spring day, Nick appeared at the bookstore, buzzing with excitement. It was unusually busy, customers browsing quietly, sunlight filling the cozy space. Nick leaned casually against the counter, his grin mischievous. "I have something special to show you tonight," he whispered, his eyes dancing with excitement. "Should I be worried?" I teased gently, ignoring the quiet voice of caution within me. "You'll see," he said mysteriously, turning to leave. "Come by the shop after closing. You won't regret it." Intrigued but wary, I arrived later at his studio, iron and ink tattoos, just after sunset. The shop was empty, the air fragrant with disinfectant and ink. Nick stood beside his chair, grinning broadly, his eyes sparkling mischievously. "What's going on?" I asked nervously, already sensing something unusual. Without a word, he slowly rolled up his sleeve, revealing his forearm. My stomach tightened sharply at the fresh ink, delicate script spelling out my initials, CLH, boldly etched into his skin. "Surprise," he said softly, his voice suddenly vulnerable. "I wanted something permanent. Something to show how serious I am about you." Shock held me speechless. Permanent? Serious? We'd only been seeing each other casually for a few weeks, barely a month. My heartbeat quickened uncomfortably, panic fluttering in my chest. "Oh, Nick," I finally managed. "Why would you do this?" His smile faltered slightly, confusion clouding his expression. "I thought you'd love it. Isn't this romantic?" "Romantic?" I echoed weakly, trying desperately to find gentle words. "Nick, this feels too soon. We've barely started dating. It's just, I wasn't expecting something so permanent." His expression shifted rapidly from confusion to hurt. His arm dropped heavily to his side, disappointment clear in his eyes. The once playful sparkle dimmed abruptly. "I thought you felt it too," he murmured, quietly wounded. "That this was special, real." "It is special," I said softly, stepping closer, trying to soothe his hurt feelings without encouraging more intensity. "But this tattoo, it's just too much, Nick. It scares me." For several painful moments, we stood silently in the quiet studio, tension thickening the air. Nick's posture stiffened, his shoulders heavy with disappointment. "I guess I misunderstood," he finally said bitterly. "I thought you'd appreciate it." "Nick," I began gently, reaching out instinctively. But he pulled away sharply, eyes distant now. "It's fine, Cassie," he interrupted curtly. "Forget it." Afterward, our interactions turned awkward, strained. I struggled with guilt, unsure how to repair the fragile bond his impulsive tattoo had cracked. But something between us had permanently shifted. The ease we once shared was replaced by an uncomfortable silence. As spring shifted towards summer, Nick avoided me completely. I occasionally glimpsed him walking briskly past my shop, his gaze averted. Then one day, I saw him with a bandaged arm, clearly covering fresh work. My heart sank. A quick check of his Instagram confirmed my suspicion. He'd covered the tattoo of my initials, replacing it with dark shading, intricate patterns masking what he'd once proudly displayed. That night, alone in my quiet bookstore, sadness enveloped me. It wasn't just about the tattoo, but about how quickly feelings can blossom and fade, especially when forced into premature permanence. Nick had meant well, but his impulsive gesture revealed a gulf between us, a mismatch of timing, emotion, and expectation. Weeks later, near the end of spring, I found myself strolling along West End Avenue again. Cherry blossoms, once vibrant, had faded, petals scattered on the sidewalks, a quiet reminder of spring's brief, beautiful illusions. Relationships, like seasons, often promised more permanence than reality delivered. Story 1. You put something decent on, I'll go and get us a drink. Ah, what a gent. Not only do I get to hang out in a gross flat, but he also has alcohol to numb the pain. I go with a classic, fresh meat, to make his bedroom seem less gross in comparison. He comes back in from the kitchen. "Help yourself," he says, passing me 2 cans of Coors Light. Great. What the fuck am I doing here? We lay down and pretend to care about the TV for approximately 30 seconds before, as a wise man once said, we get to kissin' and touchin' just a little bit. Not an awful kisser, but certainly not great. He starts slapping and grabbing my booty, pulling me into him. "I knew you were dirty." "Sir." "Okay, whatever. He clearly watches a lot of videos online. I could be into this if he can back it up, even if I am visibly cringing." Trousers off, immediately followed by the rest of our clothes. Except my top, for some reason. In hindsight, this seems to add to the embarrassment. So now it's very evident he watches a lot of dirty videos and is definitely not able to back his attempts at dirty talk. There's not even a whiff of foreplay before he goes in for the main goal. Immediately my mind wanders, and I'm having to stop myself from asking him whether he's done this before to avoid bruising his oh-so-delicate ego. Slow down, Liam. Name change for obvious reasons. I'm not there yet, was the only thing I could think of to try and slow this car crash down. That's cool, you take your time. Me take my time. I think this is something to do with you fumbling to try and find my V, attempting to insert your PP into my CLI in the process. Despite valiant attempts to initiate a bit of a warm-up before the big finale, Liam's persistent, and I'm lazy, so I let him continue failing to find the relevant home for his PP. He thinks he's found it and continues to call me a naughty girl, while humping the general area of my thighs and the air around them. I won't lie, Liam, I'm not feeling particularly naughty at this point. In fact, it's taking everything in me not to start laughing, so I burrow my face in his neck in an attempt to conceal the sniggering. He thinks he's doing such a good job, and he has such a good body. I don't have the heart to say anything or continue guiding him. He's so pitiful. So like the awful person that I am, I, too, aimlessly shag the space between us, resulting in a weird rubbing of thighs and genitals without actually having been entered at all. I'm not sure why, and it feels very Cat Hernandez of me, but I think there's something mildly pathetic about a naked man and the face they make when finishing. This feeling, needless to say, was echoed pretty violently by the fact that he'd managed to come twice without actually having been inside me, nor me touching his penis in any way, shape, or form. I'm in the flat for no longer than 20 minutes, and, during this time, Liam thinks we've had sex twice. Ready for round 3? He proposes, looking proud of himself. Round 3? I don't remember being notified that the first round had started, and I certainly wasn't aware that it had finished. I'm very much over the weird air shagging by this point, and I'm definitely over being called a naughty/dirty bitch in the process. I'm sorry, I need to go, I've got work in the morning. Never in my life have I left a flat so abruptly. I was out of there almost as quick as Liam came. So quick, in fact, that while I'm waiting for the lift outside, and subsequently howling whilst texting my housemate, Liam resurfaces to hand me my glasses that I left on the floor. I reach out for them awkwardly. Ah, thanks, before vaulting into the elevator to make my great escape. So all in all, my first Tinder date was a breeze. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who fell for a scheme, especially something that seemed so obviously shady in hindsight. But sometimes people come into your life and blind you to reason, making even the most cautious person ignore all the red flags waving desperately in front of them. Natalie was exactly that kind of person. I'd always been careful. As an accountant living in Denver, Colorado, my entire career revolved around precision, detail, and skepticism. My life was stable, comfortable, but admittedly predictable. Each morning, I'd take the same route from my apartment near Union Station, grab coffee at Little Owl, then head to my downtown office on 17th Street. Evenings were usually spent running along the Cherry Creek Trail, dinner at home, and weekends wandering bookstores like Tattered Cover. Predictable, until Natalie walked into my world. We met at a networking event hosted at the Maven Hotel near Coors Field. Natalie stood out immediately, effortlessly working the room with a charisma I'd rarely encountered. Confident, witty, and strikingly attractive, she drew people in, myself included. When we finally spoke, she listened intently, her eyes focused solely on me as though no one else mattered. Natalie told me about her background, a series of successful ventures, an MBA from UCLA, experience with tech startups in Palo Alto. She seemed legitimate, experienced, and genuine. She had a spark, a sense of adventure I desperately craved in my mundane routine. Soon, we found ourselves spending evenings at Avani Food and Beverage, talking business and sharing laughs, blending personal and professional lives effortlessly. Then, one afternoon over lunch at Root Down, Natalie revealed her next big idea, a wellness product that was poised to revolutionize the health industry. At first, it seemed credible enough, premium supplements, scientifically tested, backed by enthusiastic investors. Natalie's excitement was contagious. She painted a compelling picture of a booming market, easy profits, and most importantly, the chance to build something meaningful together. It's not about the money, she'd always say convincingly, eyes shining. It's about making a difference. Despite my instincts, I found myself intrigued. I liked her confidence, her passion, her vision. But what really hooked me was Natalie herself, how effortlessly she inspired trust, weaving her dream until it became ours. A month later, she invited me to a gathering at an upscale co-working space in Reno, filled with young professionals eager to change the world, or at least their own financial situations. Natalie stood in front, magnetic as always, detailing the business model: recruit distributors, create a sales team, earn commissions. It sounded simple, almost too simple. A voice in my head whispered that it might be a pyramid scheme, but Natalie's assurance drowned out my doubt. Pyramids are illegal, she laughed softly, noticing my skepticism. This is direct sales. Everyone benefits. I ignored the nagging feeling in my gut and eventually invested, not small amounts either. At first, it seemed to work. I brought in some friends who were equally excited. Sales started rolling, checks arrived regularly, and Natalie was thrilled. We celebrated successes at chic restaurants in Lodo, toasting champagne at Rioja, believing we'd cracked the code. But soon, cracks appeared. Sales slowed. The products were overpriced, impossible to sell without recruiting more people. My friends struggled, their enthusiasm dwindling, frustrations mounting. Money that had initially trickled in stopped flowing altogether. Instead, debt started piling up. Stress gnawed at me nightly, sleep becoming increasingly elusive. When I brought my concerns to Natalie, she brushed them aside, a dismissive wave of her hand. "You're panicking too soon," she'd reassure me calmly. "Trust the process. Success takes patience." Patience, I learned, was her go-to phrase, an empty promise designed to string me along. Deep down, I knew I'd been played, but admitting it meant acknowledging I'd ignored every logical instinct, blinded by Natalie's charisma. Eventually, reality hit hard. A news story broke on local Denver stations, exposing the venture as precisely what I'd feared, a thinly veiled pyramid scheme, already under investigation. My heart sank, panic twisting in my gut. I confronted Natalie, frantic and angry, demanding answers. She barely reacted, calmly sipping espresso at Crema Coffee House as I laid out my ruined finances, destroyed friendships, and shattered trust. Her response was cold, distant, a bitter truth she no longer cared to hide. "Ethan, you knew the risks," she said dismissively. "It's your own fault you believed it would be easy." The cruelty of her words stunned me into silence. She offered no apologies, no reassurance, just the cold truth. I'd been nothing but a means to an end. Natalie had gotten what she needed, my money, my connections, and now I was disposable. I watched her walk out calmly onto Larimer Street, leaving me stunned, betrayed, and financially devastated. In the weeks that followed, the damage became painfully clear. Friends I'd brought into the scheme distanced themselves, hurt and betrayed by my involvement. My carefully built reputation crumbled, leaving me ashamed, humiliated, and alone. The confident, cautious accountant had fallen spectacularly, his judgment completely compromised by blind trust. Natalie disappeared from Denver entirely. Her social media showed glimpses of a new life: San Diego beaches, Malibu sunsets, proof she had moved on easily, untouched by the wreckage left behind. I, however, spent months piecing my life back together, wrestling with the painful realization that I'd let charisma override common sense. Yet, even in my darkest moments, something important became clear. Natalie's betrayal had exposed more than just a financial scam. It revealed a vulnerability within me, a willingness to ignore instincts in the face of charm and persuasion. I'm still rebuilding, slowly restoring trust with friends, settling debts, healing emotional wounds. Denver, once a city I adored without reservation, now carries bittersweet memories. I walk the streets differently now, more guarded, careful about who earns my trust. I never imagined something as trivial as a collection of vintage records could unravel everything I thought I knew about someone. But life has a way of bringing hidden tensions to the surface, especially when it comes to sharing things with someone you love. I moved to Austin 5 years ago, chasing a job as a graphic designer for a startup downtown. I settled quickly into a modest apartment in the trendy South Congress neighborhood, filled with local coffee shops, vintage boutiques, and a vibrant music scene. My life was simple but comfortable. Saturday mornings at Joe's Coffee, evenings catching shows at Antone's, weekends spent flipping through vinyl at Waterloo Records. That's how I met Mia. It was a humid Sunday afternoon, the Texas heat shimmering off the pavement outside Waterloo. I was browsing through classic rock albums when she stepped beside me, long auburn hair loosely braided, dark eyes scanning the covers intently. "Looking for something special?" I asked casually. Mia smiled, a bit shyly at first. "Always looking," she laughed softly. That afternoon we talked music, sharing stories over iced coffees at Bennu Coffee, realizing we had more in common than just vinyl records. Mia was witty, creative, and a free spirit who moved from Asheville, North Carolina, to pursue her love of photography. She was also unapologetically spontaneous, which was both charming and occasionally exhausting. But I liked that about her, at first. Our relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, Mia practically lived at my place. I enjoyed having her there. She brought warmth and laughter to my quiet life. It seemed natural to share everything with her, my apartment, my groceries, my Netflix password, everything. Sharing became second nature. But soon, small things started to grate on me. Mia would borrow my camera gear without asking, help herself to my clothes, rearrange furniture without mentioning it. At first, I brushed it off, chalking it up to her creative impulses. It wasn't a big deal. Until it was. The real trouble started with my vinyl collection. I'd spent years carefully building it, each record carrying sentimental value. Limited editions from Amoeba Music in San Francisco, first pressings from Reckless Records in Chicago. They were more than music, they represented memories. One evening, after dinner at Hopdoddy Burger Bar, we returned to my place. Mia immediately went over to my shelf and pulled out a limited edition Bowie record, one I'd never even played, saving it for a special occasion. "Mind if I borrow this?" she asked casually, already sliding it into her bag. Sure," I replied hesitantly. She caught my uncertainty, pausing slightly. "I'll take good care of it," she said lightly, flashing a playful smile. I shrugged it off, not wanting to seem petty. After all, it was just a record, right? Days later, I spotted it on her coffee table. Unprotected, the sleeve creased, vinyl lying exposed, collecting dust. My heart dropped. When I gently confronted her, she laughed it off. "It's just a record, Alex. Relax." But it wasn't just a record, not to me. Things escalated quickly after that. Mia became increasingly comfortable taking whatever she pleased, ignoring my subtle hints about respecting boundaries. Books, clothing, even my carefully labeled camera lenses. She saw my hesitation as silly, even selfish. The tipping point came on a warm spring evening. I'd returned home after a stressful day, looking forward to unwinding by sorting through my vinyl. But something felt off the moment I stepped inside. The apartment felt rearranged, unsettled. My heart sank as I saw Mia, seated cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by stacks of my records. Sleeves lay scattered carelessly around her, vinyl piled haphazardly. She was cutting album covers, creating some sort of collage, destroying memories I'd spent years preserving. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked up, scissors frozen mid-slice. "Oh hey, I'm working on an art piece. Your album art is perfect for this." Anger surged through me, sharp and hot. "Mia, those were mine. You didn't even ask." Her expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "I didn't think I needed permission. We share everything, remember?" "Not like this," I said firmly. "Not my records." She stood slowly, frustration flickering in her eyes. "It's just stuff, Alex. You're overreacting." Something in me snapped. Without thinking, I stepped forward, gathered the ruined records, and walked straight out onto the balcony overlooking South Congress Avenue. Without hesitation, I dropped them into the dumpster below. They fell with a dull, painful thud. Mia stared at me, speechless. I felt strangely numb, standing there empty-handed, my chest tight with regret but also relief. "That was petty," Mia finally whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Maybe," I admitted, meeting her gaze. "But you can't just take what's mine and call it sharing. That wasn't yours to destroy." The silence that followed was deafening. Mia didn't apologize. She just turned away, gathering her things quietly. "I guess we're not as compatible as I thought," she said coldly, finally breaking the silence. The following days felt empty and strange. Mia distanced herself, sending brief, curt messages whenever we spoke. I felt a mixture of guilt and sadness, but deep down, I knew I'd done what I needed to do. Sharing a life with someone didn't mean sacrificing your own boundaries or losing your sense of self. Eventually, we broke up quietly. Mia moved to East Austin, and we drifted apart. Friends occasionally asked what happened, and when I explained, some understood, others shrugged, saying, "It's just stuff." But it wasn't just stuff. It was about respect, respect for boundaries, respect for each other's histories, respect for what's personal. My records had only been the catalyst, revealing how different Mia and I truly were beneath the surface. Months passed, and eventually, I found myself at Waterloo Records again, quietly rebuilding my collection. I couldn't replace the memories lost, but I could move forward, choosing carefully who I allowed into my shared spaces. Austin remained my home, vibrant and comforting, but my experience with Mia had changed me. It taught me something important. Real love and intimacy aren't built by erasing boundaries. They're built by respecting them. It's funny how life always has a way of reminding you how little you really know about someone, especially someone you think you understand completely. That's exactly what happened when I met Lucy. At first, everything felt simple. It felt real. I had no idea I was just another strand in her carefully woven web. I'd moved to Seattle 3 years earlier, taking a cozy little loft on Capitol Hill. Life as a freelance photographer meant freedom. Coffee at Victrola, late-night ramen at Oink, wandering the streets capturing rain-streaked scenes that I later sold to travel magazines. My life was predictable in the best way, quietly adventurous and uncomplicated. That changed the day I walked into Elliott Bay Book Company on 10th Avenue, intending to pick up a new photography anthology. That's when I saw Lucy for the first time. She stood by the travel section, flipping through a guidebook on Iceland, her dark hair spilling carelessly over her shoulders, one eyebrow raised skeptically. Something about her presence was captivating, confident yet approachable. I remember walking over, casually suggesting the Reykjavik guide next to it. She glanced up at me, smiling playfully, and my carefully balanced life tilted. Within days, we met again at Optimism Brewery, swapping stories over craft beers until the staff gently suggested we leave at closing time. Lucy was a travel blogger, vibrant and effortlessly charming. She seemed to know everyone, always laughing, eyes sparkling as she shared tales of backpacking in Europe, festivals in Asia, and hidden beaches in South America. Her life sounded like a highlight reel, exciting yet somehow mysterious. Maybe that should have been my first clue, but I was too caught up to notice. Weeks quickly turned to months, and things were good. Our relationship stayed casual. Comfortable dates at Cary Park overlooking the skyline, street tacos at Tacos Chukis, and afternoons exploring Pike Place Market. Nothing heavy. It was easy, exactly how we both liked it. Or at least, how I thought she liked it. Then, one rainy afternoon at Cafe Allegro near the University of Washington, something happened that changed everything. Lucy was running late, and I sat quietly with my camera, mindlessly scrolling Instagram. A group of Lucy's acquaintances was huddled nearby, sipping coffee and gossiping quietly. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but one name caught my attention clearly. Lucy. She's still going through with it? One girl said quietly, disbelief evident in her voice. I honestly thought she'd change her mind. Well, the guy's already bought a ring, another responded, her voice low, tense. They booked a venue in Auckland months ago. Lucy says it's happening, no backing out now. My heart stuttered painfully in my chest. Auckland? Venue? Ring? They couldn't mean my Lucy. I listened closer, dread pooling in my stomach. The conversation continued in whispers, but I caught enough fragments to piece it together. Lucy had a fiancé in New Zealand, someone she'd met months before. They were getting married soon. It had been planned long before we met. She had never mentioned it to me, not once. Suddenly, the cafe felt suffocating, my pulse thundering in my ears. When Lucy finally walked in, soaked from the rain but still smiling brightly, I forced myself to pretend nothing was wrong. She leaned in for a kiss, but it felt hollow now, her laughter empty. I had trusted her, even admired her carefree independence, only to find myself caught in a secret I wasn't supposed to uncover. For days afterward, I wrestled with the truth. It seemed impossible. Maybe there was some misunderstanding, some other Lucy in Seattle with a similar story. I wanted desperately to believe I was wrong. Then came the moment that made everything painfully clear. Scrolling through Instagram one evening, alone in my Capitol Hill loft, a photo stopped me cold. Lucy, radiant and smiling, stood in front of Auckland's sparkling waterfront, her dark hair blowing gently in the wind. Beside her was a man I'd never seen, tall, rugged, grinning confidently. Counting down the days with you, the caption read, followed by a wedding hashtag. I felt like I'd been punched. My fingers trembled as I clicked deeper into her carefully curated feed, now seeing clearly what I had overlooked. Photos from New Zealand months earlier, vague but suggestive captions, cryptic comments from people I never knew existed. How had I missed all the signs? My phone buzzed suddenly, a text from Lucy. Miss you, let's grab sushi at Japanesa tomorrow. She was still playing this game, juggling her worlds so effortlessly it left me feeling dizzy and nauseous. I wanted to confront her, demand answers, but pride and fear tangled together inside me. Instead, I replied simply, "Can't tomorrow. Sorry." It felt weak, but I couldn't bring myself to face her just yet. Days stretched painfully slow, my mind replaying every moment we shared. What had I meant to her, if anything at all? A week later, another photo appeared, stopping my heart again. Lucy, standing on a white sand beach, turquoise waves lapping behind her. Her fiancé beside her, arms wrapped tightly around her waist. The caption read, "Forever starts now. #JustMarried." I stared numbly at the screen. Married. The word echoed inside my skull, cold and relentless. It was over, and I'd never even had the courage to confront her. Lucy had simply moved on, stepping gracefully from one carefully planned life into another, leaving me tangled in her web. I didn't reach out again. I didn't know how. Instead, I quietly withdrew, deleting her number, unfollowing her feeds, cutting every invisible thread connecting us. Seattle felt lonelier afterward, my once comfortable routine shattered by unanswered questions and lingering self-doubt. Months later, as autumn rain swept across Capitol Hill, I sat quietly in Elliott Bay Books, absent-mindedly flipping through a photography anthology, the very one I'd intended to buy the day I met Lucy. In its pages, I found snapshots of distant places, people with lives entirely separate from mine. It reminded me how little we truly see of the stories unfolding around us. Lucy's web had trapped me briefly but completely, leaving scars hidden behind casual smiles and careful silences. Even now, when I cross paths with strangers in coffee shops or bookstores, I wonder what secrets they carry, what strands they quietly weave. Trust is delicate, easily broken, and impossible to fully restore once lost. Lucy taught me that, and while the bitterness of betrayal has softened over time, its lesson remains sharp. People can hide entire worlds behind smiles and laughter, carefully maintaining illusions until the truth finally surfaces. Seattle is still my home, still familiar, but something in me changed. I wander the city streets with a photographer's eyes, more observant now, recognizing that beneath every casual encounter might lie a carefully concealed truth. Each person we meet holds their own stories close, beautiful, painful, complex, and the boundaries between sincerity and deception are thinner than we ever dared to imagine. Lucy's web unraveled my trust, but in the process, it opened my eyes. I never thought something as simple as voicemails could unravel my entire life. I've always been the type to dismiss romantic gestures as cheesy or superficial, cute but unnecessary. That changed the day Lorelei walked into my classroom at Sunset Middle School in Portland, Oregon. It had been a rainy Tuesday afternoon, typical Portland gloom, and I was packing away sheet music after my last music class. The squeak of damp sneakers on the polished gym floor told me someone was there before I saw her. Lorelei stood quietly near the door, clutching a pile of books, a bashful smile on her face. She was the new librarian at Sunset Middle. Quiet, quirky, and the exact opposite of my usual type. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but something about her drew me in. Lorelei was different. Maybe it was the way she fumbled nervously with her glasses whenever she spoke, or the way she'd laugh a little too loud at my jokes. Whatever it was, it worked. Our first few weeks together were casual and comfortable. Coffee at Stumptown on Belmont Street, exploring Powell's books downtown. Easy, relaxed dates that never felt forced. Then came the voicemails. At first, they were innocent and charming. Lorelei would leave short messages about a funny thing that happened during her shift at the library, or just to remind me about our dinner plans at Screen Door on Burnside. I liked it. I wasn't used to someone thinking about me during the day, let alone reaching out to share little moments. It made me feel special in ways I hadn't felt in a long time. But soon, the voicemails began to pile up. At first, it was one every few days. Then it became one every single day. Sometimes 2 or 3 in a single afternoon. And they weren't just quick messages anymore. They began to stretch into minute-long monologues. Eventually, each voicemail lasted several minutes, then longer. I remember one rainy Saturday morning vividly. I just picked up a fresh cup of coffee from Blue Star Donuts in the Pearl District, walked back to my old Subaru parked on Everett Street, and saw my phone flashing 3 missed voicemails, all from Lorelei. I played them one after another as I drove home along Hawthorne Boulevard, my stomach nodding as each message grew longer, more intense. She talked about every detail of her day, the books she shelved, the students who visited her in the library, the mundane details of a faculty meeting. Then, she'd slip into how much she missed me, how she counted minutes until we'd meet again. She was earnest, sweet even, but something felt off. It was too much. My phone had become a digital diary of her day, every thought spilling over uncontrollably. At first, I shrugged it off. Maybe she was just lonely, I reasoned. She'd moved here from a small town in Minnesota, still adjusting to Portland's eccentric ways. But then, I noticed a change in Lorelai's demeanor. She grew anxious whenever I didn't respond quickly. She'd nervously ask if I'd listened to her latest message, eyes wide, fingers fidgeting nervously with her cardigan sleeves. One evening, after dinner at Fire on the Mountain on Burnside, I decided I had to say something. We sat across from each other, half-eaten wings cooling between us while rain blurred the windows. I chose my words carefully, gently explaining that I enjoyed hearing from her, but didn't need so many detailed messages every day. Lorelai seemed fine, nodding quietly, saying she understood. "I'm sorry, Finn," she said softly. "I'll dial it back. I promise." I believed her. For a while, things seemed okay. The messages slowed, and our relationship briefly settled back into its comfortable rhythm. But a week or two later, I felt her pulling away. We saw each other less, and when we did, something felt strained. She spoke less, smiled less, her green eyes no longer lighting up when we met after work. At first, I assumed she just needed space. Maybe she was embarrassed or hurt. I gave her time, hoping she'd eventually come around. But then I started noticing strange things happening around my apartment near Laurelhurst Park. Books moved slightly out of place, missing notes for music lessons I'd prepared earlier in the week. Nothing big, just oddities. Then came the day everything changed. It was another cloudy afternoon. I returned home from teaching at Sunset Middle, expecting to find the usual quiet solitude of my apartment. Instead, when I opened the door, my chest tightened. The air felt oddly heavy, scented faintly of something metallic and burned. Cautiously, I stepped into my living room, shoes squeaking against the hardwood floor. My eyes immediately caught sight of scattered shards of black plastic littering the floor around my coffee table. My voice recorder, something I'd used for song ideas and recording student practice, lay crushed and shattered. The knot in my stomach tightened. My heart beat erratically as I knelt down to inspect the damage. Beside the recorder, a tangled mess of magnetic audio tape spilled out, twisted and torn beyond repair. Lorelai had been here. Somehow, I knew it instinctively. My eyes darted around, searching for more clues. Nothing else appeared damaged. But why destroy my recorder? Shaken, I reached for my phone, dialing Lorelai's number, but her line went straight to voicemail, ironic considering our recent struggles. I left several texts, asking her if she knew anything about it, but my messages stayed unread. The following morning at school, I waited anxiously in the teacher's lounge, hoping Lorelai would appear to explain herself. But she never came. When I finally went down to the library during lunch break, another librarian stood behind her desk. "Lorelai called in sick," the woman explained. She hadn't been answering calls since yesterday. Days passed. Lorelai didn't return to school, didn't respond to any of my messages. I drove by her apartment near Mississippi Avenue several times, knocking on her door. No answer. Her neighbors said they hadn't seen her in days. Lorelai had disappeared. A sickening dread settled over me. I couldn't sleep, haunted by the image of my shattered recorder and the spilled tape. The apartment no longer felt safe, and each passing day without explanation increased my unease. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, life at Sunset Middle settled back into its routine. The faculty assumed Lorelai had simply decided to leave abruptly, though no one knew why. But I couldn't move on. The unanswered questions lingered, consuming me. Late one autumn evening, as leaves blanketed Laurelhurst Park, I sat alone in my living room, drinking coffee and watching rain run down the windows. My phone buzzed, startling me. A voicemail notification flashed on screen, an unknown number from Duluth, Minnesota. Hands shaking, I pressed play. Lorelai's familiar voice flooded the room, soft yet unsteady, speaking from somewhere far away. "I'm sorry, Finn," she whispered. "I never meant to scare you. But I needed you to understand. All those messages, they weren't just words. They were pieces of me. I destroyed the recorder because I couldn't bear knowing my voice meant so little to you. It's better this way. Please, just forget me." The voicemail ended abruptly, leaving the room filled with silence. My heart raced, pounding painfully in my chest. It had always been more than just messages. Those were pieces of Lorelai, fragments she'd trusted me with. Yet, in trying to preserve myself, I'd unknowingly broken her trust. I met Jonas on a Tuesday. It was one of those boring, cloudy afternoons where everything feels a little too quiet. I'd been swiping through a dating app out of habit, not hope. Just trying to kill time on my lunch break. Then his profile popped up. No shirtless pics. No fishing photos. No gym stats. Just one picture. Him in a bookstore, smiling softly, holding a book I loved. The bio read, "Looking for someone to build a quiet future with. Bonus points if you believe in fate." It felt intentional. So I swiped right. He messaged instantly. We met for coffee that evening. I almost canceled twice. But when I walked into the little cafe, he stood to greet me like I was someone he'd been waiting years to meet. "Hi," he said, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. They shimmered, not with charm, but with certainty. "You look like a memory I haven't had yet." That should have been a red flag. Instead, I smiled. The first date lasted 4 hours. We talked about everything. Our favorite childhood books, dreams we didn't tell anyone, the way it feels to be lonely even in a crowd. He listened like he was memorizing me, repeating little things I said back to me later like gifts. "You said your grandma made you peppermint tea when you were sick. That's why you drink it now, isn't it?" "Yes," I said, surprised. I didn't think I said that out loud. "You did," he smiled. "I pay attention." That should have been the second red flag. Instead, I felt seen. By the end of the second day, he'd sent flowers to my apartment. Not just a bouquet, a whole arrangement of peonies and eucalyptus in a ceramic vase with a handwritten card. "You're the first calm I've felt in years." Oh gee, it was beautiful. Romantic. Suffocating. The third day was when everything cracked. He invited me to the lake. Said he wanted to show me the place he used to go to as a kid. It was secluded, surrounded by tall reeds and crooked trees. We sat by the water and ate sandwiches he packed. "You know," he said between bites, "I've never believed in taking it slow." I laughed. "I've noticed." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small box. Not a ring box. A velvet pouch. Inside was a delicate silver necklace. It had a little charm, the infinity symbol twisted into a knot. "I saw this and thought of you. Jonas, it's been 3 days." "I know. Isn't that wild?" He clasped the necklace around my neck without waiting for permission. That night, I told him I needed to slow down. He didn't get angry. He just went quiet. The silence wasn't sad, it was sharp. "You're scared," he said finally. "That's okay. You've been let down before. I'm not like them. I just don't know you yet. You will. And when you do, you'll realize we're the same." The next day, I didn't hear from him. It was a relief, until around 6 p.m., when I got a message from a friend. "Are you at the park? What's going on?" I had no idea what she meant. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. A picture. Jonas. Standing in the middle of the local public garden. Holding a bouquet. In front of a crowd. Next text. "Girl, is he proposing to you right now?" I got there in 10 minutes, heart pounding. The park was buzzing. Dozens of strangers. Some filming. Some confused. And there was Jonas, standing beneath a white arch someone had clearly helped him set up. Rose petals on the grass. A Bluetooth speaker playing a violin cover of Can't Help Falling in Love. He spotted me. Smiled. Then dropped to one knee. 3 days, he said loudly. 3 days was all it took for me to know. You're it. You're my peace. My home. My future. He opened a box. A ring. A real one. The crowd gasped. My hands were shaking. I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything. I turned and walked away. He didn't follow. That night, he sent me a message. "I forgive you. Fear makes people run. But we both know what this is." I blocked him. 2 days later, my apartment door had a note taped to it. 3 days was enough for me. It will be enough for you too. No signature. Just that same infinity charm, now broken in half, taped beside it. I moved a week later. Got a new phone number. Deleted the app. But sometimes I still see him. At the grocery store. Outside my gym. Never close. Just there. Watching. Waiting. And once, I found a rose under my windshield wiper. Tied with a ribbon. No note. Just a tag that said, "For would have been too late." I met Demi in the frozen food aisle. Seriously. She was standing in front of the ice cream freezer, staring like she was making a life-altering decision. Her cart had nothing in it but hot sauce and oat milk. "You look like someone who's about to make a really dramatic choice," I said. She turned, smiled slowly. "Everything is dramatic if you look at it the right way." I couldn't tell if that was a red flag or a flirtation. Maybe it was both. She gave me her number scribbled on a grocery receipt. By the next night, we were drinking red wine in my living room. She kicked her boots off like she lived there already. She moved through my apartment like she was cataloging it, hands grazing the backs of chairs, fingers tapping window frames. "You live like a man raised by a good woman," she said. "Is that good?" "It's rare." She asked about my mom on the second date. "What's her name? What's she like? Are you close?" I told her my mom's name was Rhea, that she lived a few towns over, that she made the best cornbread in the universe, and yeah, we were close. "Too close?" she asked. "Not at all," I laughed. "She's just solid." Demi smiled. Solid women build soft men. I didn't know what that meant at the time. By week 3, Demi had met most of my friends. They liked her. Said she was quirky, sharp, funny in a way that sometimes made you feel like she was laughing at you from the inside out. Then she asked to meet my mom. No hesitation. Just, "I'd like to meet the woman who made you." I told her we could plan something soon. Maybe dinner. She looked at me a little too long, then said softly, "I want her to like me." When she finally met my mom, it was supposed to be casual, just dinner at Rhea's place. I expected some small talk, maybe a little awkwardness. I didn't expect the transformation. Demi showed up wearing a pale floral dress I'd never seen. Her eyeliner was gone, replaced with soft makeup and a meek smile I didn't recognize. She brought my mom flowers, called her Mrs. Rhea, and the moment my mom complimented her dress, Demi blushed like a child. The night went smoothly, maybe too smoothly. They got along weirdly well, shared a glass of wine, talked about baking. But what stuck with me was this moment in the kitchen. I walked in to grab water and found Demi watching my mom chop garlic, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like she was watching something sacred. After that night, Demi started bringing my mom up in every conversation. "Do you think Rhea would like this movie? Did your mom ever make you soup when you were sick? Your mom has such a calming presence. Do you think I do?" At first, I thought it was sweet. Then she started texting my mom. I hadn't given her the number. When I asked how she got it, she shrugged. "You left your phone unlocked." "I just copied it." I told her that wasn't okay. She got quiet, then said, "I just feel close to her. I want to learn from her. I want to understand her." I didn't know how to respond to that. Things escalated slowly, then all at once. Demi started dressing like my mom. Same colors, same soft curls in her hair. She even bought the same perfume. I caught the scent on her scarf one morning. "You're being paranoid," she said when I brought it up. Then she looked at me, completely serious. "Do you miss her when you sleep alone?" I didn't answer, because I didn't understand the question. One night, I came home from work to find Demi in my kitchen, wearing my mom's apron, making cornbread. The smell hit me like a fist. "How do you know her recipe?" "She showed me," Demi said. "We've been texting." I walked over, looked in the pan. She smiled. "It's not perfect yet, but I'll get there." I called my mom that night, told her I was worried. Rhea was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "She's intense. Sweet, but something about her feels like an echo." I asked what she meant. "She doesn't want to be close to me," Rhea said. "She wants to be me." I tried to break things off the next day. Demi cried. Not like a girlfriend, like a child being abandoned. "You're choosing her over me," she said. "And I get it. She's the original. I'm just the copy." "That's not. Do you still wish you could crawl into her lap and disappear?" That was the last thing she said before walking out. I blocked her number, deleted the photos, tried to forget, but it didn't end there. A week later, I visited my mom. She was shaken. She came here. "What?" She knocked on the door wearing that apron. Said she needed to talk. Said you belonged to her now. "What did you do?" "I closed the door," Rhea whispered. But I could hear her breathing outside for 10 minutes before she left. That night, I found a note taped to my apartment door. "She fed you. I made you. That means something." No signature. Just a sprig of dried rosemary taped to the top. My mom uses rosemary in her cornbread. I haven't seen her since. I've moved. Rhea changed her number. But every now and then, I get a letter. No return address. Just perfume on the paper, and messages like, "I would have been a better version of her. You should have let me keep you safe." Mothers love unconditionally. I was ready to prove that.